market. We are split headquarters between here and San Francisco. So half our team is here, half our team is there. And if you'll take me to the next slide. We are doing something that's not audacious at all. We are trying to take Amazon out of the knees. So Amazon, thank you. We think so too. So Amazon created the marketplace for, basically a marketplace for third-party sellers. And they did a really incredible job of building the network effects between buyers and sellers, connecting buyers and sellers and doing that in a protected way that made consumers confident that they would get the thing they were paying for. The problem is, anytime you have a public company or a privately held company or a publicly traded company that controls the network effect, you effectively end up in a situation where at some point there's diminishing returns for the participants in the network to the benefit of that company. And so what we are doing is basically breaking that apart. So we are creating basically a different alternative to e-commerce. And I think we're going after a reasonable sized market because there's $1.63 trillion worth of third-party market sellers on third-party marketplaces globally last year. Go ahead. So the reason it's broken is because you've got a middleman. And in this case, we have one very clear middleman in this country and in many parts of the world that basically is leveraging their power, their market power, and their control over these network effects to basically extract every penny they can. And it's not because Amazon is bad, it's because that's how capitalism works, and that is how publicly traded companies have to operate. They're looking for an extra nickel every day because that's what they have to do for their fiduciary responsibility to their investors, their shareholders. The other thing they've done is to keep themselves in that position, they have made all of their sellers sign price parity agreements in order to be viable to win the buy box. And so the buy box, some people don't know what that term is. When you click add to cart, there's a competition that goes on behind the scenes to see which vendor is going to win that thing. And it's totally opaque. So they're always gaming it, trying to figure out how to get in there. But they don't actually say, this is how you win the buy box. This is how we decide. And 50% of the time, it isn't a third-party vendor. It is Amazon selling you that product. And then lastly, they're controlling all the data. So if you're giving data to Amazon with an expectation the product's going to show up at your house, that seller gets the absolute bare minimum that they need to in order to deliver the product to you and nothing else. So you as a consumer have lost control of your private data, and the seller, who's the person you really want to have the relationship with because you're giving them your money and you're buying their product, they don't get visibility into it. So if you take me to the next page. So what we are doing is we are basically building a protocol in the architecture that allows anyone who has an audience to basically stand up their own curated marketplace that is relevant to their audience. So imagine that you are a popular food blogger, you've got 1 million followers, and you're always using wacky ass kitchen gadgets and really tasty spices that aren't things that show up on your local neighborhood store. Why wouldn't you, if you have command of 1 million person audience, create a curated marketplace with all of those goods that you're talking about in your blog? Well, you wouldn't right now because 1, you don't want to hold inventory. 2, you don't want to deal with fraud dispute resolution. 3, you certainly don't want to deal with fulfillment and inventory. But if you could solve all those problems, why would you want to lose your audience to Amazon and then hope that you get a percent or two of that purchase if that person goes and clicks the link on your site, goes to Amazon, and completes that purchase within 24 hours? Because that's the only time you get affiliate dollars. If you'll take me to the next slide. So here's what we're doing. We need to build the architecture to be able to allow this to happen. And there are 3 really fundamental components of this. One is inventory. So we are creating a giant database of inventory that is available from any seller that would like to make that inventory available anywhere in the world. So it's what's your unique product identifier, what's your price point, what are your shipping options, etc. If it's a used product, what's the condition that it's in, etc. The second piece of it is all of the catalog data that goes with this. This is, we call it product metadata, but it's like the images and the dimensions and the specifications and all the stuff that makes you want to buy the product or not buy the product. And then the third piece of it is reputation. So I thought that was interesting that we've got two elements of reputation here. Ours is a little different, but the same concept, that you need your reputation to follow you around on the internet, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Because if we're going to decentralize and create competition at the marketplace layer, then the reputation has to follow you around. Next slide. So the second piece of this is how do we build the network effect. So the way we are going about this is we are basically creating a mechanism for buyers and sellers to share in the saved margins. So we are basically creating a situation where a merchant of, let's just say, a book, can list their product on our site or any one of the marketplaces that leverages our protocol. They list it at the same price that they would list it on Amazon, because we're not crazy. We don't think that all these merchants are going to leave Amazon tomorrow and go, woohoo, public market, you're our savior. I mean, that would be awesome, but they're not going to. So they can't break their price parity agreement. So we need to put them in a situation in which they can list their price at the same level. But if they're not paying commission, which commissions on Amazon are really high. The commissions and fees are between 15 and 40%, depending on what category you play in and whether or not you use Fulfilled by Amazon, which is really expensive. So if you're not paying all those fees, why wouldn't you want to reward your buyer? Why wouldn't you want to create loyalty with your buyer? So if you were to provide them basically with a reward in the form of a token, number one, they're making more money and more margin off of it. Number two, your buyer feels great about it and they've got a reward in their hands that might be worth something at some point down the line. And number three, you're not giving it to Amazon. So, in addition to this, we are creating basically our own marketplace. So I talked about the protocol and the architecture for that will basically enable third-party marketplaces. But the other element of this is that you need kind of a customer zero to run water through the pipes and get the network effect going. So we are in parallel with developing all of the protocol and architecture for this. We are creating public.market, which will be launching in September, which is an online e-commerce marketplace that I'm not going to demo for you because it looks a lot like Amazon. No behavior changes. You go buy stuff on it, you pay with a credit or debit card, it shows up at your house in a couple of days. It's not worth demonstrating, right? We all know this experience. The only difference is that you get a reward in the form of a patron token. And that reward is basically granted to you by the seller. But in addition to that, we're creating a daily rewards pool. And this is how we get the network effects going. So basically what we're creating is a giant pool of tokens that we hold as the company that gets distributed on a daily basis along an asymptotic curve. What that means is we're giving away 0.1% of the whole pool, or whatever is remaining in the pool, every day, pro rata to the people that bought from the marketplace. So if you bought 10% of what we had for sale, you would get 10% of what we're distributing that day. On day one, it's going to be crazy high. You're going to get more tokens than dollars spent by a lot. And so the idea is to basically really give disproportionate rewards to the early adopters of this system. And then lastly, no, never mind. See, I told you I'd get quacked. All right, questions? We're launching soon.
Aside from someone's reputation, whether they're a buyer or a seller following them along, do you have any sort of infrastructure, like for customer service, to guarantee like returns, or if there's an issue with the product?
Yeah, so the question is basically related to how do you deal with basically the reverse logistics, the customer success or the customer service elements of it, the returns and exchanges and all of those kinds of things. So the answer is twofold. So for public.market, which is our marketplace, we will be handling that with staff on our end, and then we'll be brokering it because it's a peer-to-peer relation. We don't actually take any cash in this. So the dollars go directly from buyer to seller through a payment gateway. But we'll be brokering that to ensure that there's a great experience for the buyer and the seller. When we talk about third-party marketplaces that build on top of the protocol, most of those sellers already have reverse logistics service providers, at least the big ones do. And if not, they do it in-house, so it'll be a matter of brokering it as well. There's not an element of the protocol that sort of facilitates that yet, but we're open to discussing and adding that. Question?
How do you deal with KYC, AML, and bad reputation actors?
Wow, that's a good question. So one element of it, yeah, if we could solve that problem, we'd be great. So the question is related to basically bad actors as it relates to reputation, and there's a ton of gamification that goes on with Amazon and others around this, where, for example, you've got people that are buying product and just like throwing it away so that there is a verified transaction, et cetera. There's a couple of elements to it that we're building into our reputation system that has to do with kind of an escrow of the period, like there's a waiting period. You need to ensure that there is a verified transaction, but they figured that out too. So I think it's gonna be evolving. All of this stuff is open source, and our expectation is that we will build a community that will help us with these things too. So the MVP basically has kind of an escrow period for resolution if there's a dispute between buyer and seller. And that's about as far as we've gotten. So if there's more to it, I'd love, if you have good ideas, come tell me. Yes, question?
So your tokens are rewarded to people, to both sellers and buyers. What are they used for?
So there are a couple of functions. So eventually we expect that the token will be on an exchange, but not in the immediate term. Within the ecosystem, it's used as a reward and obviously a loyalty. It kind of functions the same way that an airline mile would. So airline miles, is, I'm sure everybody in this room is familiar. As you earn them, you earn higher tier membership, and so you have more benefits as you earn them. It doesn't have to do with how many you hold, and it doesn't have to do with how many you spend. It has to do with how many you earn. So there will be a similar membership tier that gives you access to early sales or faster rewards accumulation. The first tier will be basically our equivalent of Amazon Prime. So, thank you very much.